Hey guys, what's up? Bring me the boa here. Yeah, I'm still set up exactly the same. That didn't make grammatical sense. I am set up exactly the same as I was in the last video I filmed, just because both these snakes are going to illustrate some two very good points, and some of these struggles, but benefits of having hog noses. Now, wow, that was some loud laughter. So both of these snakes, surprisingly, are about the same age. Fun fact. Now, it all comes down to eating habits. Argenta is fantastic at eating, like I've mentioned several times. Talos, on the other hand, not so much. He actually went on a feeding strike for quite some time. The only way I was able to snap him out of it is a tactic that is very, very frequently used with hognoses. You may be asking, what is this tactic? And some of you who watched the last video may be like, we get it, it's scenting, but what is scenting? It's exactly what it sounds like. You scent a pinky, and by scenting, I mean you rub it on something that the hognose likes the smell of and thinks, that's pretty tasty. And can you stop grabbing onto stuff? I gotta move stuff, because Talos grabs stuff with his body. But they're around the same age. I think they're only a month apart. So, but it comes down to how much they're intaking in terms of calories and how much nutrients they get in order to grow fast and to grow efficiently. And Talos, I found out, really, really likes salmon juice and tilapia juice. So I've been scenting his pinkies with that. Now, I am going to do a video next time I'm feeding him to show, hey, I'm scenting. Because I don't know what it is, but as soon as he smells it, his jaw swings open. It's not like a slow like that. It's like, whoosh, and he just shoots at it like a little torpedo. And I've never seen him that aggressive towards his food, and I love it because it shows that I now have a tactic to get him to eat. For Tiber, on the other hand, he still won't accept it. And then a lot of Percy, Valentine, and Azura require no coaxing whatsoever. I just give it to them exactly how it is, and they eat it. In fact, I'm probably going to be feeding Argenta tonight because she is prowling around like she's hungry again. So she will be getting food again tonight. And then Tiber legitimately hasn't eaten since the one time I mentioned, oh, he's such a good eater, and then he has not eaten a single time since. So still trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong there. But scenting can be done in a variety of ways, and this is starting to get too much for me to talk and focus. No, maybe it's not. Plus, they just look cute. But scenting is a tactic for... Now, if the snake has been confirmed a good eater and is feeding fine for you, do not try scenting. It can completely undo all that hard work. Scenting is more so if they have not been eating for quite a while and they aren't growing and they are potentially losing weight. Start scenting to get them to eat. Now, scenting can be done in a variety of different ways and variety of different methods. It kind of just depends on the hognose that you're feeding, which sounds stupid, but hognoses individually are picky in different ways. I'm going to move like that. And I don't really know if there's a scientific explanation to it other than they legitimately have personal preferences to what scents make them hungry. Now, in Talos' case, he loves tilapia. Salmon is a close second. He does not care much for tuna, which I don't know how he can really tell the difference, to be honest with you, but he can. Now, Argenta will... she has eaten some scented ones that Tiber refused to eat, and thankfully, she just is always so hungry she doesn't care what it smells like and just eats it. And for that, I am super grateful. But scenting can sometimes have the wrong effect and will actually get snakes to only eat things that are scented, which is bad because then now it's extra work and extra effort. But also you run the risk of running out of what is being used to scent. Now, I mentioned that I was keeping some toads for my tricolors. Toads aren't necessary if I don't have a breeding female. But You can scent by having the juices of something, the innards of something, or that something alive. Now, in the case of the tricolors, rubbing rubbing toads on the mice were enough to coax some of them to eat. From what I've heard, sometimes you have to use the innards and really get it in there to get it to smell like a toad. Other people I've heard using toad juice, which sounds disgusting. But some people say like toad juice is it can be a couple different things, like toad water, like water a toad has been sitting in but did not die in, so it smells like a toad. Now that smells awful, but I think to a hognose it'd be like, ooh, that's pretty good. But again, not all hognoses think the same, and that is the issue. Like I mentioned, how it works with this little worm right here is fish. I almost said fish scents. The sense of fish, like the smell of tilapia, the smell of salmon, like the meat, the smell of the meat. So it's usually the juices that come off after either you cooked it or you thawed it out, or it's just in a can and in juices. Or pureed meat. These all can be suitable methods of scenting. With the toads, rubbing can be suitable, or if you really have to resort to it with some hognoses, you might not have an option. You might have to feed toad. Now, for hognoses, there are a couple different ways to handle this. You can get frog legs. I've heard people having success with frog legs. Essex Hognose used, it looked like lip balm, but it was meant for baiting, I think. Like baiting, like for fish. And he had success with that, but he also had, he bought an American toad for future scenting. But then I know some hognose breeders that have had to legitimately go out and catch baby toads and feed them to the snake, and obviously it was alive. And I know I've been a big proponent of live feeding is not good, but in that case, it's pretty much the same that would happen in nature. And on top of that, it's the necessity of one animal over another. And obviously, that gets to a whole moral dilemma that I'm not going to get into with this, but if it's necessary to save your animal, it's necessary. But if you are not comfortable with feeding yours baby toads live, you can also, I've heard there are some vendors who actually sell feeder toads and frogs that have been frozen, so it's like frozen thawed pinkies. Now, I know that'll make some people a lot less squeamish, but if you really are like, I don't really like the concept of that either, man, well, boy, do I have a solution for you. Reptilinks. Now, this is not a sponsored video. That'd be nice, but no, it definitely is not. Considering I just started using their products, we actually bought a bunch of their calorie-dense Reptilinks that were toad and frog links just for Azura. And now we have it in case we have guys that won't eat, which Tiber has showed some interest, but he just never actually finalized the bite. So I'm also still working on how I'm supposed to actually prep them. I just let some thaw, and they kind of mushed and fell apart. So I don't know if I did something wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if I did. But we have all sorts of different Reptilinks. They make some for beardies and other lizards that are kind of like bearded dragons that are omnivorous, where they can eat meats and vegetables. But we have, I want to say I have some chicken and toad, larger Reptilinks, for my larger hognoses. So when Argenta gets to breeding size, it'll be her breeding season snacks, essentially, because they are calorie dense. But they will smell like toad, and that is the benefit of them. And So I know for some people this is a solution, but they also aren't necessarily cheap. They are shipped on dry ice. I don't remember how much it cost. We ended up spending like at least $30, I think, on Reptilinks. But the product is not bad at all. I just haven't had success feeding it just because I kept squishing them. Because they're these tiny little things, and I kept... Because they have alginate shells, essentially. So it's essentially any of you who were in the same marine biology class as me in high school or had the same marine bio teacher, you'll know the diversity of algae and how it is more fun to say algae than algae or algae. It is made out of kelp, essentially. It's a clear membrane that is easily digestible and easily broken apart, and because of that, I could not figure out how I was supposed to feed it. If I'm supposed to put it in their container and leave it, if I'm supposed to feed it with tongs, because that's what I tried, and I squished one of them into such weird proportions that I could not hold it anymore. So it'll be a journey. I'll end up doing a video on how to correctly, if I'm doing it wrong, or how to prep Reptilinks if I make some sort of discovery. As if someone probably hasn't already done that. But that is one way to get around the whole scenting conundrum, is because it has the meat that is desired in it. Because hognoses are very amphibian centric in terms of their natural diet. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens when... Because I do someday want to get some wild caughts on the species that aren't in trouble. Just because there's some of them that they just look stunning, and I would just have them purely just because I think they're cool, and this is just like a weird bucket list thing I have, is I want to have all the North American hognose species as wild caughts, one of each as pets, because I think it'd be kind of cool, and I don't know, it'd be kind of... I almost said it'd be like a good final arc if my channel was a show, but full well I wouldn't be done with that. Unless it takes me like years and I'm 82 years old and I finally do it, then that'd be a good final video for the channel. But that's if you hear the word scenting being thrown around, you will hear it with other snakes as well, because snakes, as you can see, Argenta flicking her tongue around, scent is a big proponent of their life. That's how they can distinguish snakes from other snakes, same species of snake, prey versus food, male versus female, where to find opposite gendered snakes. It plays into a lot of different roles. And because of that, their sense of smell is very, very sensitive. And so scenting would be an issue when you have such a, not generalized, but so specific of a predator. These guys are little apex toad destroyers. So, I mean, if their entire physiology is adapted around toads, you'd assume that there'd be some sort of issue getting them to convert. And I'm itching my nose out of screen. I'm kind of surprised that they've had the amount of success of conversions that they've had, to be quite frank with you. So, scenting, it plays a pretty big role. If you're wanting to get into hognoses, you're going to have hatchlings that will refuse to eat unless things are smelling a certain way. You will have snakes that you buy that will refuse. Sometimes they'll just randomly refuse. Talos here was eating unscented pinkies perfectly fine before I bought him. And he was for a while I first had him, and then recently he's just decided, meh, And I think it's because I one time fed all of my snakes tilapia, and I think that's where I shot myself in the foot. So I'm now living the whole thing that I'm now preaching now, is because I've gone through that. I've unconverted one of my snakes, so now I'm living with the repercussions of it. Now, is it difficult? No, I just now have to constantly remember to keep salmon juice and tilapia juice in my freezer. But that is just something that, if you are really into hognoses, is a risk that you're always going to have to live with, because Not that it's a huge risk and a huge deterrent, but I know for some people it'd just be too much. And if it's too much for you, like I'm not going to judge. Chef, don't judge. And sometimes that's just not what you wanted or not what you expected. And sometimes, some people like the challenge. I like the challenge. But other people just want a nice, cool, chill pet. And for that, I'd really recommend really getting to know the breeder and the snake. If you are dead set on a hognose of some kind, no matter the species, and are really, really just wanting a nice, chill pet where you don't have to worry about scenting or feeding issues, know your breeder, but also get to know the species. Because there are several species of hognoses out there. There are 5 in North America, which for a while I only thought there were 3 until I learned there was a 4th one, and now I've learned there's a 5th one. So, which is going to add to my whole series of different species of hognose in the U.S. now, because I have more to talk about. But research your species, because there's not just North American, but there's also South American hognose species, and there's also the Madagascan species, which have been the most neglected of the 3 sort of categories of hognoses, because I never have even seen one in person. I find them cool, but I really have more of a soft spot for the North American species, and then the South American, and then the Malagasy are just kind of last, just because no experience, never seen one, out of sight, out of mind type of thing. I sometimes even forget they exist. Plus, a lot of my attention has been put into the ones that are native to areas that I'm near, which would obviously be North America. Which is why I can't stress enough, know which species you're going after, because some are easier to convert to than others. Obviously, it also depends on the individual, and that's why I'd recommend getting to know your breeder very well and reading reviews and really paying attention to how many people have had issues with scenting after getting the snake versus what was claimed. Because if that's a burden for you, or if it's an issue or a potential deterrent, but you still want the snake, really just pay attention to reviews like that. Ask people who have put reviews. Ask the breeder. Granted, some breeders will not be honest and straightforward about it. That's just the risk you play. But every breeder I've talked to has been so upfront and straightforward with me about things that I believe pretty much everything they say up front. So, now granted, I'd also ask multiple breeders, kind of compare and just do stuff like that to figure out if scenting is worth the trouble to you, and the snake is worth the trouble of scenting. But then not only that, if you're willing to have the trouble of scenting in the first place. Because I know for some people that's like a no, and if that's the case, I'd really recommend rat snakes, corn snakes, gopher, bull snakes, pine snakes, things that are naturally rodent eaters, because rodents are the most abundant food source that is going to be available to domestic snakes. As for these guys, I have some breeders I'd recommend, because I've had no issues with scenting. JMG Reptiles, a very big one I'd recommend. Hardcore Hognose, another one I'd recommend. And WGH Reptiles. She's a smaller breeder, but the size does not deter from the quality. And the quality that I have gotten from Argenta is quite numerous. Is that even a thing? Quite numerous quality? That doesn't sound about right. That sounds a little off. She's a quality snake, and the size doesn't always determine the quality, because Jeff from actually either Jeff, they produce very quality. I'm so tired. I'm sorry. Such high quality snakes, and they have larger breeding projects and breeding operations than Wendy at WGH Reptiles does. And Argenta is an amazing feeder. I've never had to scent anything. And that just shows that it's not always about the size of the breeder, it's about the quality of the snake. And so that's why I'd recommend getting to know the breeder, and essentially getting at least one from them. And obviously I know not everyone's trying to do what I'm doing, where like you want to have a collection of snakes or have multiple snakes. You just want one. And that's why getting to know the breeder or watching videos that are like kind of like the ones that I do where after I get a snake I review it. Watching videos like that, if you can find it on them, which is going to be the problem because there are a few breeders, and obviously not everyone's going to want to publish their opinion in a video format or on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram. But I guarantee you'll at least be able to find a couple. And so therefore, look at them. Figure out what you want. Because ultimately scenting is just part of the hobby for hognose people. We all need to be prepared for it because we all face the potential of having to scent for these snakes. And to me, I frankly don't care. I love these snakes so much. I find them so interesting. I find them so beautiful and so unique that scenting is not a burden to me because that's just part of their character to me. That's part of what makes them so unique, is that they are primarily amphibian destroyers. And because of that, I totally am fine with having to scent stuff because that's just what they're naturally built for. But I know not everyone shares that opinion. If you guys have any other questions or anything that you thought I covered well or would like to know more about that I mentioned in this video, leave it down in the comments below. If you liked the video, let me know by either liking or subscribing or even just leaving a comment. Any of the three are very meaningful responses to me. So I'll see you guys in the next video where I'll talk a little bit. It'll be a short one, like 5 to 6 minutes, on the little twitching thing that sometimes you'll see hognose doing and hypothetical purposes as to what it serves. I'll see you guys in the next video.